This is TNCRadio.live.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live, where James Rogers, Jamie Irvine, and Tom Kelly provide owner-operators of commercial trucks with expert advice about starting, operating, and growing a professional trucking fleet. It's time to mind your trucking business.
Thank you, Ron. We appreciate that. TNCRadio.live. This is Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom Kelly, along with James Rogers. How are you doing tonight, James?
Oh, good. It's been a busy couple weeks here for me, so real good.
Are you out driving?
I am. I'm all the way up in, at the time of this recording, I'm all the way up just outside of Green Bay.
Wow. So you have to stop by and say hello to the Packers.
I am. Hopefully I can get me a cheesehead and take it home with me.
Great. And I'm also with Jamie Irvin. Jamie, how are you this week?
I'm doing really good. Just got back from Cleveland, Ohio. I was at the Technology and Maintenance Council Super Tech competition where 78, well, actually it was over 100 to start with, but 78 diesel technicians went head to head for the title of Grand Champion. A big congratulations to Philip Pinter from FedEx Freight. He cleaned up, man. That guy won just about everything, including Grand Champion. So that was a great week to get together. They've got task force meetings, study groups, and the competition. We were there to cover it from the Heavy Duty Parts Report. So glad to be home, but really enjoyed being at that industry event.
Okay, now help me for a moment. Take a moment. Tell us, what does that mean? Grand Champion bull rider?
So, no, diesel technicians. So the Technology and Maintenance Council is sponsored by the American Trucking Association, and the Technology and Maintenance Council comes together twice a year to put together recommended practices for commercial fleets. In the spring, we go to the annual meeting, and it's more of a trade show environment. All the suppliers come in and the fleets get to meet all the parts suppliers, and they get to see new equipment, that kind of thing. But in the fall, it's a very unique meeting because it's actually what they call a super tech competition, where the technicians, they compete all year long. They qualify to come to this annual event. There was over 100, I think it was like, don't quote me, 130 or 140 that started in pre-qualifying on the first day. A bunch of them were cut, and there were 78 people, diesel techs, who then went for the big day of competition, where one technician is crowned Grand Champion. And so there's 14 heats. They're timed. You have a judge in an orange shirt right over your shoulder. And as a mechanic or a technician, you've got to actually go through and diagnose problems, and you've got to, take the wheels off of the truck. And it's an amazing event. And you can imagine putting your, whatever job you do, just imagine going into a national competition to see if you've got what it takes to be the best in the nation at what you do. That's what the Super Tech is for technicians. Absolutely amazing event.
And I'll bet you that you would win the blue ribbon, the gold coin, the whatever it is, for the person who hosts the best Heavy Duty Parts Report podcast.
Sure. One thing that I got to say, though, it was really amazing to be there and to see the camaraderie, to see the support. People's families flew in to support them. Companies brought in many technicians. They were all cheering on their people. It was just a great event. But yeah, it takes some chops to put your hat in the ring and find out if you're the best in the business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, Jamie, you sent us a couple of things for us to be thinking about as we prep for today's show. Tell us about one of the articles you sent us.
So big news as of Thursday, October 6th, Kenco Logistics is going to be acquired by a private equity firm. So this PE firm called Pritzker is making their first foray into logistics, and they purchased the Tennessee-based company Kenco Logistics. The reason that this got my attention, many of you know my back history. I sold a company, so M&A news is always something that picks up my interest. But what I kind of got from this was a family-owned business. And the question I posed to both of you, James and Tom, was, is this maybe the signal of the end of an era where somebody could go from a family-owned small fleet and scale to a really large organization? Are those days behind us? Is that going to go the way of the dodo as the baby boomers exit the workforce? And are younger generations going to have that same opportunity that previous ones did to build a privately held company and scale it to the size of Kenco? I don't know what the answer to that is. I kind of am leaning towards, I think those days might be behind us.
I think business, in this in particular, is a great example, is cyclical. And, if you want to be a genius in business, tell everybody you work with, yeah, we're experiencing bad times right now, but it's going to get better. And when it's really good, you tell everybody, yeah, it's good times right now, but we better make hay because it's going to turn. Right now, not a good time.
No, it's not. I mean, it's rough. Yeah, very rough.
I would not advise our listeners at this particular moment. Now's the time to go buy a few trucks. If you're just getting started, and I don't know, but just will there be that opportunity again? It may not be, Jamie, for 10, 15, 20 years. I think it comes back around, though. But I think for right now, I think you're right. I think for now, anyway, that part's done. But, the whole thing then turns around again. And it's just kind of the way America works. As you were going through some of the history of economics or macroeconomics a few weeks ago, we're just going through one of those times where we're at the end of one era and another era is going to start, and there'll be new opportunities.
Even with me in the last 5 or 6 years, as much as I keep wanting to grow and grow and grow, it's very hard for a small business to grow, especially a family-owned one. But I think, the thing that I found interesting in that article when I was reading it was the fact that it was a third party, like a capital investment group, Pritzker. And they're like the third company I've seen do that this year, where they just went and bought a carrier, but they left the structure in place, like the same owners, the same CEO, the same staff. They didn't change nothing. They just bought them. So it kind of, I don't know if it is over, but it does perk my ears up to, why are they doing it?
Well, James, like I understand why the private equity company, like first of all, let's give people an idea of the scale of Kenco. So they started in 1950. They went 19 years where they probably were a relatively small company, and then they landed DuPont as a customer. And that just it caused their company to explode. And DuPont remains a Kenco customer to this day. So fast forward from 1950, 72 years later, they have 100 distribution facilities, 36 million square feet of space, and they operate in the range of $1 billion in revenue. So as a private equity company, why am I buying a company like this? Because I'm scared that I'm going to lose my portfolio to unstable markets that are related to tech and other sectors. And I'm putting my money in meat and potatoes companies. So I get why the PEs are doing this. I guess my question just was, could someone like James Rogers, who started his company a few years ago, could his great grandchildren be selling his company 70 years from now, for $1 billion? Is that still possible for people in transportation today? Or are there too many barriers? Is the times different? Time will tell, I guess.
I would say too many barriers right now. But those barriers will come down. So it may not be his great-grandchildren. It might have to be his great-great-grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I hope if I had it my way, they'd be doing that. But, it's an unforeseen future right now.
Yeah, and Tom, this really brings, as anybody who's bought and sold companies, that there's a great deal of negotiation that goes on in all of this. So I think today, and I'm really excited that Tom, you wanted to talk about negotiations, because I think that this is something that we can really help the listeners with, to get some practical advice on how to handle negotiations for their fleet, regardless of the size.
Well, yeah, and for any small business owner, but especially we're going to keep our eye on the world of the trucking business. But this is something where 75% of owner operators say that they do not feel comfortable negotiating terms for their loads. 75%. Let's notch that up. Let's get a couple extra percentage points there, and see if we can maybe knock that down to 70%, because 5% of them listen here.
Oh, absolutely.
So that we're gonna increase that number a little bit, make it a little more realistic, a little more fun, and we'll have some fun doing it. You're listening to TNCRadio.live. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. A gentleman in his 80s was talking to me about a procedure in his life that he was uncertain about. And I commented by saying, I've known you long enough to say that whatever happens, you'll be okay. You'll land on your feet. You'll be buoyant. I feel like I have the right to say that because I've known you for a few years and you bounce back from things. He stopped for a moment and he said, I really appreciate you saying that. I think it's probably true, but just hearing that come from you, well, I appreciate the encouragement. Do you encourage one another? We have Bible verses that talk about encouragement. We have lessons from Buddha that talk about encouraging people one to another. Well, we also have psychological research. There's a psychologist named Wang out of Indiana University who wrote about encouragement and studied, when encouragement and how encouragement makes a difference in the lives of others. So here's 3 things that we can glean from how to effectively encourage one another. First of all, it should be commensurate with what's happening. It shouldn't be, you have the ability to go to Harvard if they're just scraping by. You keep it specific to what they're capable of accomplishing. Secondly, it has to be from someone who's deemed to be trustworthy. And thirdly, keep it focused on their accomplishments. Stay positive. Say you've finished 70% of the assignment. I know you could do the rest of it. According to the research, these things make a difference. But always continue to be positive and encourage one another, because humans respond very well to that.
Be sure to listen to Building Strong Minds with Dr. Chris, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, right here on TNCRadio.live. Ready for the power of positive and something that will put you back to a time you wanted to last forever? Music is the ultimate time machine. What was your favorite time? Do you want to go back there? LTD Radio features the songs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that will transport you to a happier time. It'll make you smile and brighten your day. We could all use that about now. TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the great music of LTD Radio.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
And welcome back in TNCRadio.live. This is Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom, he's James, he's Jamie. And we're going to be talking about negotiations and all that kind of stuff. Jamie, you said I should kick it over to you. What's it worth to
you? Well, Tom, let's talk a little bit about that. So, when it comes to negotiations, it's a very difficult thing, I think, for a lot of people. But when you start to understand some of the principles and the psychological things that are happening, you can get better at it really, really quick. So, James, let me ask you a question. What is probably the number one reason a owner operator or a small fleet would hesitate to negotiate their rate?
I'd say that I have to give a top two. Here's the top two that I've seen. One, the most prominent one is some sort of societal fear of rejection. Number one. Number two, the other one is they just don't know their numbers. They don't know what their value is or their worth.
Would you say that maybe that fear of rejection is also closely connected to fear of losing the business?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna like take us out of the truck world for a minute, but I think it really will illustrate the point. So, Tom, if I'm going to sell a house and you're my real estate agent and James is the only buyer who came and put a bid in on the house I'm selling, what's your advice to me?
My advice to you?
You're my real estate agent, so I've only got one person offering to buy my house.
But what is the bid close to what you were looking for or not?
Regardless, I need to sell.
You need to sell.
I need to sell. So what's your advice, right? It's like you got one bid, you're going to take it. Okay. Now here, let's change the scenario. Let's say there's 50 people who are interested and 10 people put in like written offers on my house. But the roof on my house should probably be changed. So I'm not going to re-roof the house if I've got 10 competing bids, right? But if I really need to sell the house, James is the only person interested and I gotta sell. And James comes and says to you, the real estate agent says, I will buy it, but only if the roof gets changed. I have no power as the seller because I need to sell. And so I'm going to be like, fine, whatever. I'll pay for the roof. Let's just take James's offer because I got to sell this property. Right. So whereas if it's a different scenario where, yeah, the roof probably needs to be done, but I got 10 bids and they tell someone, one of them, James says, well, I'll buy it, but only if you re-roof. I'm going to tell him, no, thanks very much for your bid, but no thanks. I'll take my chances with the other 9 bids. So what happens here? What actually happened there, right? It's about leverage. It's like if you're in a position where you have a measure of need and even a slight bit of desperation, you're at an immediate disadvantage when it comes to negotiating anything. Whereas if you are in a position where you're like, yeah, well, take it or leave it, the whole stress and pressure of negotiating suddenly feels very different. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Agree, 100%.
So then there's a little bit more going on there as well. So once you enter into negotiations, there is a battle from a psychological perspective between the two parties. Somebody's trying to win the negotiation. And the person who wins the negotiation is usually the person who maintains the highest status throughout the negotiations. And oftentimes what I see people who haven't been formally trained on how to negotiate is they inadvertently do and say things that lower their status, thereby putting them at a disadvantage in the negotiations. Doing business together is a highly social activity, and the principles and the psychological things that happen in communication and in that social interaction between people, those principles hold constant whether you're at a party talking to someone for the first time or you're negotiating a business deal. Very different context, but principally speaking, a lot of these things that are kind of going on just under the surface are operating whether you know about it or not. And so I think that's one of the reasons is like, one, people are hesitant to negotiate because they're afraid of losing the load and they need the load. They need that revenue and they're scared. They haven't built up enough potential business to give them confidence. But even if they had that confidence, they might inadvertently do things that would lower their chances of getting a higher rate. And so today I kind of want to talk through some of that stuff so we can help people see, maybe what the mistakes they're making, and then talk about what they should be doing.
All right. So how would you like to start?
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to start with is this whole idea of like, what position are you entering the negotiations from? Are you positioning yourself from a position of strength or a position of weakness? Because that is going to have a huge impact on the outcome. When I ran my contracting business and we were in our first couple years, and when I was building my consulting business, both times when we were new, we didn't have a lot of business at the beginning. And I'm not advocating that you lie, but you need to act like you've got more business than you can handle, because that will send nonverbal cues to the person you're negotiating with. There's just something about the way you hold yourself. So I remember with my contracting business, I would always tell clients, like, I'm not available till next Monday. And they were like, wow, you're always booked. I wasn't, but I never said, I'm available in the next 6 hours. Like, just let me get there and I'll start the job. Because that would be communicating desperation. That would lower my position. It would inevitably cause me to have to lower my prices and all of that. Now, I know that's a little different than the trucking world, but you do need to approach it from a place of confidence. James, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, no, you're not so far off with the trucking industry as far as what you're saying there. Like you said, it's about how you enter yourself, right, from a position of weakness or strength. And you said a key thing there as far as, about the booking part, right? Like, that's one of the things that I had to learn when I first started, and what I see with a lot of contractors that, when they sign on with me or that I've talked to and try to help them, is they try to, for instance, they will call a broker and immediately say, I need a load down. And the key word, need, right, and now. Where I'm experienced, I will never use the word need, nor do I ever say I need it now. I'm the same as you, where I'll say, oh, I got a load for the next 2 or 3 days, but what do you have to offer?
Yeah. And one of the things that someone asked me one time is they said, wow, you're not as available as other suppliers of the service I was offering. And I said, well, you have to ask yourself one question. And they said, okay, what's that? And I said, the question you have to ask yourself is, if anybody in this business is good, they're booked up. So anybody that's available right now, you might want to do some due diligence on that service provider, because there might be a really bad reason that they're available right now. And so, you have to be careful with the words that you choose, but in principle, what we're trying to communicate is, look, I am a serious business operator. I operate my truck, or I operate my small fleet. I'm serious about doing business. You're serious about your business, and we're looking to provide you a service, and you need me. And I have lots of work to go do. So if you're not going to be serious with me, and if you're not going to work with me on pricing, I have other people who are lined up to do business with me. That's the kind of feeling you want people to get. But you have to be very careful that you don't come across as arrogant or really aggressive from the perspective where you've crossed certain social lines and you're no longer professional. It's not so much what you say in the words, it's more in how you carry yourself. And it's the beginning points of negotiation, because, again, need and now, if somebody came to me and said, I need you to come pick up this load right now, and I need you to get it to such and such location, within the next so many hours, that should be a signal to me that they actually would be willing to negotiate on price. Right.
Absolutely.
So you can actually flip that around on them. And that's how you maintain high status. You say, absolutely, I could do that. Here's the rate price that we have. What's the rate that you're offering? No, I'm sorry. What's the old saying? You can have it good. You can have it fast, or you can have it cheap. But it's always two of those three things, never all three.
Right.
So if you need a good service and you need it fast, it ain't going to be cheap.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, we're going to take a quick break and be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to be talking about negotiation and giving you some tips as you go out there in the world. And I mean, we're negotiating all the time. So whether this applies directly to your business or just your day-to-day life, could be helpful to you. We'll be right back on tncradio.live. This is Mind Your Trucking Business.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is boosting the image of the industry by telling the story of trucking, and your story can be part of it. Upload a photo, tell us what you love about trucking, or send us a story about a good deed or charitable act in trucking. Be sure to follow us on social media and contact us through truckingmovesamerica.com. That's truckingmovesamerica.com.
Join Tom Kelly and the rest of the team each day on the Morning Grind. Then stay tuned for an encore presentation of last night's Landline Now. Weekdays on tncradio.live.
Catch Landline Now every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, along with an encore presentation weekdays at noon, right here on tncradio.live.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live.
Welcome back in tncradio.live, Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom, and that's Jamie, and that's James, talking about negotiations today. And Jamie, you made a really great point as we got started in the conversation in the last segment. Give me another good point here. And let's remember too, anybody listening to this, you don't have to memorize all of these. So you can download the podcast and listen to it over and over again and memorize it if you want to. But just listen for the point that makes you go, yes, that's the piece I'm missing. And incorporate that into your next negotiation. What else would you like for people to bear in mind?
Okay, so we already talked about when you start the negotiations. As you approach the negotiations, make sure you're doing so from a position of strength. And even if you have to fake it a little bit until you make it, that's actually quite normal for a small business owner who's just getting started. And James, you agreed with me on that, right? You need to approach it and say like, look, I'm not desperate for the next load, because if you do approach it that way, it puts you at a disadvantage, right, James?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 100%. I was that guy. I faked it till I finally started making it. And yeah, the best way I could explain it is if I could give an example, is like if you call in like a, owner operator, you call in and negotiate a load, first understand that you're not there to haggle. There's a difference between haggling and then negotiating. But more importantly, don't put yourself in that position of desperation. Like I said, one of the top things that I tell people do not do, and this will tell a broker or whoever you're negotiating with right now just how desperate you are or whatnot, is do not give them your price of what you need. I hear it so many times when I'm on the phone with helping people out and teaching, is they say, oh, I need $1.25 a mile. I need $2.25 a mile. Right there, you've killed it. You've shot yourself right in the foot, and you're in a position of weakness right from the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree. So once you're, in a negotiation, that's not the time to start having to try to figure out what your numbers are, or to start, throwing out, like you said, what your price, your bottom price is. Like you don't want to be second guessing yourself during a negotiation. So you need to be prepared going in. You need to know your numbers. You need to know what market value is. You need to know what your cost structure is, and you want to know the range that you're going to be willing to work within. And so while you're in negotiations, and I don't think everybody, I mean, some people are very shrewd negotiators and they're always looking to grind everybody and get the best deal. But sometimes things happen that inadvertently lowers your status with the person you're negotiating with. And that usually happens when they ask a question that kind of throws you a little off, right? You start to scramble a little bit to come up with an answer, and that puts you at that disadvantage, right? So I think it's really important to be prepared, to know your market, know the market pricing, know what your costs are, have that information clear in mind, so that when they throw a curveball at you, they throw a question at you you're not ready for, you are able to respond in such a way that continues to communicate that, look, you're a serious player, you know your business, you know what the market will bear, you know what the going rates are, and you're not the type of carrier that slashes their prices to get a job because they're desperate. So really having that little bit of preparation before you go into the negotiation is important. And when you come to the end of the negotiation, usually it comes to a head, and there's a point where a decision has to be made. And what I've always found is that if you're the person who's talking last, you've lost the negotiation. And I think that it's very important for you to end the conversation with a question to the person you're negotiating with, and then you be quiet and do not talk, no matter how comfortable it is, until that person responds, right? So for example, you could say something as simple as, so how do you see this working for you today? Something like that, right? Like, how do you see this working for you today? And then just shut up and just smile and look at them. Because if you talk next, you've lost the negotiation. What they're going to say is they're going to say something along the lines of, well, I think that would work, but okay, you can deal with the but. You can respond to that, and you can continue the negotiation. But if you end with, so what do you think? You think that's going to work? And then the person doesn't respond, and then you talk next. Normally, what you're going to say next is, well, I could drop my rate a little bit. Right? Because you're nervous and you're feeling like, I'm losing this negotiation. And so I really need this job. So you've got to maintain a bit of composure throughout all of this. Inside, you're going to feel nothing but like not even close to be composed. But you have to maintain that composure. And it's kind of like exercising a muscle. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you start to see patterns in dealing with carriers, and you start to see those patterns, you can start to see what comes next. So that's my big takeaway there, is like how you approach it and how prepared you are as you go through it, and making sure that you're not the last one talking in that negotiation. You put those three things together and you stand a much better chance of getting higher rates.
Yeah.
Tom,
and like,
sorry, James.
Yeah, no, like, and you're bringing up very valid points, because like in this industry, for an owner operator, one of the key things like that, we call it controlling the anchor, right? So if you're, like you said, if you're the last one talking, you're fishing, all right? It's fishing. It's almost like an act of desperation. You're begging. You have to control that anchor. And these brokers, like in our industry, I'm just talking industry specific for us, or even anybody you're negotiating with. If you control the anchor, you control the conversation. And that's what you need to do. And when you're first learning to do this, that was one of the most uncomfortable things for me to get used to, was to know when to shut my mouth and just wait. And it is very difficult to do.
And just remember, the person asking the questions is in control of the conversation. Don't you agree with that, James?
I agree 100%. Absolutely.
See what I just did there?
Yes, I did. Yep. I
was directing the conversation because I'm the one asking the questions. So when you're asking the questions, you are in control. So, instead of, so what do you think? That's not a good question to ask. A better question is, so like, what other options do you have right now? Like, if you ask that, that's a much stronger question than, so what do you think of my offer? And you got to
Exactly.
get comfortable with pushing that a little bit, and get comfortable with asking the right questions. And over time, you'll learn what the right questions are, because you'll try some of them, they'll blow up in your face a little bit, and you'll be, oh, okay, don't do that one again. And it is an iterative learning process. Tom, what's your thoughts on all this?
Well, I think going in, and you've given us some very good advice. I think going in, one of the things you have to know is where your limits are. I won't go above this. I won't go below that. And you got to stick to it. You got to stick to it. And that means being ready to walk if you're not getting what you think you need. And that can be, especially because let's face it, guys, sometimes you are desperate.
Yeah.
Okay. But they come back. I mean, you've said $2 a mile. Okay? In your mind, I can't go below $2 a mile. 180 is not okay.
No.
Okay. You, based on everything that's been put together, you said $2 a mile in your, I'm not talking about what you've said to them. I'm talking about what you've said to yourself. I don't care how bad their story is. And by the way, shut up and listen to their story. Don't tell your story. Listen to their story, because if you listen to their story, you're going to find out a whole lot. And maybe you'll find out that your $2 a mile is way off and it should be $3. Okay. Listen first, talk and talk. Don't talk last. Okay. How's that? The more they're talking, the better it is for you, but you've got to come in already knowing where you're going, and you cannot break that rule. Even if it means you have to stop the negotiation for a while and come back later, you cannot break your own rule for, I can't do this less than $3 an hour or $3 a mile. Then it's $3 a mile.
And Tom, we started the conversation today talking about the Kenco merger. This is $1 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that the people who the privately held owners of Kenco, before they went into negotiations with an M&A firm, do you think that they maybe did their due diligence? They knew their numbers inside and out, and they had a number in their head. And then on the other side of that coin, the PE company, don't you think that they did their due diligence and they knew their numbers backwards and forward, and they came together and they obviously pounded out a deal that was mutually beneficial for both?
Yep.
Now, everybody understands that with $1 billion deal, but actually it's no different with $1,000 deal.
Or a $100 deal or a $10 deal.
Exactly. The principles are exactly the same.
Exactly.
Know your business, follow those principles, you can succeed.
Yep. All right. Hey, we got one more segment. We're going to do that. And when we come back, you're listening to TNCRadio.live. Mind your drunken business. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. Do you suffer from chronic anxiety? That is, do you have lots of worry and edginess and autonomic hyperarousal where your heart is racing and you have shallow breathing and just feel on edge and uptight all the time? Well, we have brand new research from the University of Gothenburg, and I don't even know where that is. But the research says that the most effective type of treatment for chronic anxiety is not a pill. It's not even relaxation nor mindfulness. You know what it is? It's strenuous exercise. In fact, the researchers found that the harder you worked out, the more that you did, the more that you got your heart rate up, the more you brought your anxiety down, not just after the workout, but you actually brought the anxiety down weeks after. Well, what's the point here? Primary care physicians should be prescribing exercise to all of us, whether we have anxiety or not, and work out as hard as you possibly can, because at that point, you'll either be less anxious or dead.
Be sure to listen to Building Strong Minds with Dr. Chris, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, right here on tncradio.live. Hey drivers, did you hear music on tncradio.live that you really liked? Or maybe you heard us interview an author of a book you'd like to read or listen to. You can get the books, music, and other products you hear about by going to our website at www.tncradio.live and clicking on the shopping cart. I'm Shelley Johnson with Kathy Tuccaro. You can hear us Tuesdays on tncradio.live at 8 p.m. Eastern on Women Road Warriors. And don't miss Steve Summers' Overnight Drive right here on tncradio.live, weeknights midnight to 5 a.m. Eastern. Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live.
And welcome back in tncradio.live. Thank you, Ron. We're talking about negotiation here on Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom, and there's James, and there's Jamie. Let's go back. I'm going to pick back up here with Jamie. We've each listed out some of the things that we think are important in negotiation. What's next on your list there, Jamie?
I think that the thing that you want to communicate through, it's a combination of what you say and how you conduct yourself. But at the end of the day, you just want to have this mindset. I'm a serious business person. I'm here to provide a service. When someone uses my service, they get more than they pay for, right? Like I deliver my loads, I'm safe. I'm a serious business person. You've got to get to that place. Like, you're a professional and you want to act like a professional. And I can tell you that negotiations that are done from that perspective of professionalism, I'm sure that there's some people out there who don't act professionally at all, and they just try to take advantage of drivers. But you're not one of those people who are going to be taken advantage of. And like we talked about, James, sometimes on the inside, it sure doesn't feel like you're very confident, but you've got to maintain a level of professionalism, and you have to maintain a bit of decorum and kind of just conduct yourself as best you can from that place. And if you do that, the more often that you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And you're going to start to develop a reputation as somebody who, is fair, but not someone to mess around with. And also someone to rely on, right? You want to have that reputation of, hey, look, if you need it done, you want it done right, you call James, because he's going to make sure it happens. And once you build up that reputation, the negotiations get easier and easier and easier. It's almost like, the bully on the play school yard, right? You pop that bully in the nose. At least back in the 80s when I was a kid, that was the advice we always got. It's like, you tried to walk away, and if they didn't, and they kept trying to bully you, finally you just turned around and gave them a good shot to the nose. And all of a sudden, guess what? They never bullied you again. Now, I know times are very different than 40 years ago, but just from a principle perspective, from a psychological perspective, once you have that reputation of being a serious business person who is a fair but tough negotiator, those bullies out there aren't going to try to take advantage of you. And if maybe they don't know you and they do, they're going to find out real quick that you're not one of the drivers that they can take advantage of. And here's the other thing. You don't want to be wasting your time with people who are going to try to take advantage of you and lowball you on price, right? You want to spend your time with the higher quality companies that are going to negotiate fairly with you, that are going to work with you, and that you can build that professional relationship with. Let other people who are willing to drive at a loss fail to negotiate with bad actors who are trying to take advantage of drivers. What do you think, James?
No, you're spot on. I'm just sitting here just shaking my head. If I had marbles, I'd be making noise all over the place. But it's 100% right. That one, with keeping my mouth shut, and then also too, understanding of what my value is, right? That's another thing I would say that probably owner operators or new owner operators in this business, or even some experienced ones, you see them, they're afraid to say no, right? They're just afraid to say no. Tom said it in the last segment. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to hang up the phone. And like you said, I don't want a broker or a customer, potential direct customer that I'm working with to waste my time, because I'm not going to waste their time. And that's kind of a reputation that my company has developed is people know when they call, we're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive, but we are fair. And more importantly, we get the job done. And that's kind of where you have to go. And that comes with developing that confidence and knowing where that borderline is between confidence and arrogance. And that's it. Once again, it's something that's not natural. I've learned that it's not natural. The art of negotiation is just that. It's an art. So absolutely 100%. You're spot on.
It's not natural, but it becomes like muscle memory the more you do it.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
it's not natural for people to work out at the gym either, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Let's talk a little bit. I mean, in the negotiations we're talking about right now, we've spent an awful lot of time talking about price, but we all know that a lot of times that's not the sticky part of the negotiation.
Agreed.
A lot of times you can they came to your number real quick. It's what they say next that's the issue. And I need it there at 5 a.m. Or I need it in downtown at 4:30 p.m. They know that the thing they're about to say is going to likely create an issue. Okay, that's why they were so quick to get to the number. Okay, they were okay with the number because they know the next thing they're going to ask you is the thing that you don't want to say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the secret on that. Anytime somebody asks you to do the best you can to do it in exchange for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So in other words, I need this downtown Houston, and it's got to be delivered between 4:30 and 5:30 on Thursday afternoon. Now, anybody who's ever driven in downtown Houston knows that between 4:30 and 5:30 on a Thursday afternoon is awful. Okay? Nobody wants to drive in downtown Houston between 4:30 and 5, much less in a big truck.
I've got a great example about that.
So what
when
you need to have ready in your back pocket is what it is that you want for that favor, for that extra piece that they're asking for. What is it that you're going to be looking for? Okay, now, you've got a great example but everybody needs to. Maybe it's okay, fine. You're going to put me up in a hotel. Maybe it's you. That's no problem. 4:30, 5:30. And I'm going to have dinner at the Taste of Texas, and I'm sending you the bill. Okay, but whatever it is, you have to be ready to come right. Never let a favor go unanswered. If they're giving you something that they want you to do that's above and beyond what you've already negotiated, and that's, if they're smart, that's how they do it. They get you to a place where you're happy, and then it's going, just if you don't mind, could you also, that should set off red flags, and you should be ready with the response on, I'll be happy to do that. I just need X in response. Yep. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, well, the example I got is a week ago. A great example. A broker customer we work with very frequently called one of my contractors and said, "Hey, I've got this load," and he negotiated this load to a T. He got exactly what he was wanting to get paid, but then all of a sudden he shut his mouth, just like he said. He quiet. He just sat there, and then the broker came up with the big question: "We need James to do it." And then the question was why. So they got me on the phone, and I'll just give you I'll give you from where it was going to where it was going. I'm not going to talk about the money because it was an absorbent amount of money because they specifically asked for me, but it went from St. Louis to Fort Bragg. Why do you think they wanted me?
Military.
A veteran who could get on the installation with no problems.
Right.
And that cost them. that cost them dearly.
So you ended up renegotiating the price on that one?
We did. I said, I specifically, because I was at home, right? I was in St. Louis. The contractor was in St. Louis. And then when they specifically asked for me, I said, that's another $1,000 to get me out of the office.
Sure.
And they wanted me that bad, and they paid an extra $1,000 to move that product.
Great.
And I just want to add one thing to that. Sometimes when they ask for that extra thing, don't underestimate silence.
Yes.
Like if someone asked something kind of off the wall of me and I didn't really want to do it, I think the thing I would do is I would look at them with a warm smile on my face and not respond right away. I think sometimes we're very quick to respond, and that costs us a lot. Because here's what happens. You smile and you don't say anything, and the other person gets uncomfortable and says, well, yeah, don't worry about that. And you're like, okay, you didn't even have to say anything. So silence is very powerful.
Sometimes they go ahead and give you what they think that extra thing is worth.
Yes,
exactly.
You don't respond to it, and they say, and I'll throw in a night at the Marriott.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to leave everybody with is the 7 golden words. Is that the best you can do?
Mm-hmm.
And then shut up.
Yeah,
you will not believe what people will say to those 7 magic golden words.
I think we're going to need to talk more about this in the weeks to come. We're going to talk more about negotiating. We're going to talk about closing the sale. We're going to talk a lot about a whole lot of different things, constructive things that you can do to make your business better. I'm Tom Kelly with TNCRadio.live. You can catch us 24 hours a day. Use the web, use the app, catch us anytime. Jamie, how can people find out more about you and hear your stuff?
Head over to heavydutypartsreport.com and you can find access to all of our programming, as well as get me on all of our socials.
And James Rogers, how about for you?
Easiest way to get hold of me is you can email me at spartandirect@outlook.com, or you can go to YouTube, look up the Road Rage Podcast and leave me a comment on any of my videos. I'll get back to you, or just email the show directly.
There you go. All right. On behalf of Jamie Urban and James Rogers, I'm Tom Kelly. We'll be back same time next week, right here on TNCRadio.live. Mind your trucking business.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.